new U.S.-sponsored trade agreement called the TransPacific Partnership. 11 countries are now engaged in TPP negotiations. The United States, Canada, Mexico, Peru, Chile, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Malaysia, Brunei, and Vietnam. Japan is also considering joining the talks, and other Pacific Rim countries may participate in the future.
The U.S. model for the Trans-Pacific trade deal needs to be completely remade, top to bottom. Friends of the Earth is calling for a fair deal for people and the planet, or no deal at all.
And obsessive secrecy surrounds the negotiations. The public, the press, and even members of the U.S. Congress are denied access to the negotiating text. What are they hiding? First, that the TPP is being written under the supervision of multinational corporations. The TPP text is secret to all except so-called cleared advisors. In the United States, there are over 600 such cleared trade advisors, almost all of whom represent corporations or industry groups. Second, they are hiding the fact that the TPP is not so much about trade as it is about deregulating the Pacific economy, providing super rights to corporations. The investment chapter is perhaps the most important and the most dangerous section of the whole agreement.
What do the corporations affected do? They run to these international trade courts and try to become more powerful than governments themselves. They try to essentially replace democracy and public policy with the rules that the corporations write.
The investment chapter would have dangerous implications for the environment. A similar provision of the U.S.-Ecuador bilateral investment treaty allowed the oil giant Chevron to sue the government of Ecuador.
In the mid-1960s, Texaco, which is now Chevron, developed the oil fields in the eastern Ecuadorian Amazon. The indigenous and local people who live in this area say that Texaco deliberately dumped billions of gallons of toxic wastewaters, drilling muds, and oil into their environment, causing a social, cultural, and environmental crisis.
Chevron es culpable. Chevron ha destruido todo lo que es nuestra riqueza natural.
This area was a pristine rainforest, one of the most ecologically diverse places on the planet, and the homeland to many indigenous cultures. But after Texaco arrived, it became a tropical wasteland. Literally, they would drill for oil and dump the formation waters, the drilling muds. They would just dump them into unlined waste pits. Hundreds of unlined waste pits, Olympic-sized pool unlined waste pits. Yeah. And of course, because it's a rainforest, these waste pits would overflow into rivers and streams, causing what experts say is a rainforest Chernobyl.
The indigenous people and poor settlers of the Oriente region suffered an epidemic of cancer and other illnesses they say resulted from Texaco's dumping. Death, miscarriages, and birth defects cut a swath through communities, threatening some indigenous groups with extinction. The destruction of the Ecuadorian rainforest, with its world-class biodiversity, was also devastating. This rainforest Chernobyl affected an area the size of Rhode Island, and a court-appointed independent expert in Ecuador found that the damages from the dumping amounted to $27 billion. Indigenous groups and communities sought justice through the courts, and after 18 years of litigation, a provincial court in Ecuador ruled in favor of the communities, ordering Chevron to pay $18 billion. But on February 17, 2012, an international tribunal established under the U.S.-Ecuador bilateral investment treaty put all of that in jeopardy. The tribunal told the president, the parliament, and the courts of Ecuador to suspend enforcing the judgment against Chevron.
People around the world, wherever I travel, are dismayed by the Chevron Tribunal's actions. But the underlying problem is the flawed model for U.S. bilateral investment treaties and investment chapters in free trade agreements. The U.S.-Ecuador bilateral investment treaty is typical because it favors the profits of big oil companies, mining multinationals, and the wealthy.
So why is it that the people that have suffered the most, the local and indigenous populations, why is it that they don't have a voice at the International Investment Tribunal? Why is it that U.S. policy favors financial interests and big corporate interests like those of Chevron over those of the people or the environment?
The overreaching of the Chevron Tribunal should be a warning to negotiators from the United States and other Pacific countries as they meet in coming months to fashion a Trans-Pacific Partnership trade agreement.
The investment chapter of the proposed Trans-Pacific Partnership would in effect create a separate court for capital. Now, the arbitrators or the judges in these tribunals are typically international commercial lawyers who may one day serve as independent, quote-unquote, arbitrators, and then on the next day return as corporate counsel. The other thing is that most arbitrators are actually from the United States and Western Europe, while most of the defendants are from the Global South. And so I call this a kangaroo court.
The TPP investment chapter would provide greater rights for foreign investors. These super rights for big oil, big pharma, and Wall Street investors go far beyond domestic constitutional protections of property rights and due process in the United States. In fact, the U.S. already favors property rights and corporate rights far greater than almost every other country in the world.
The worst thing about the proposed TPP investment chapter is that it would likely result in crippling awards of money damages against developing countries. Now, developing countries, some of them face billions in liability. Worse, countries will actually back away from instituting new legislation and regulations designed to protect the environment, protect public health, and the public interest. Some people call this the chilling effect. I call it the deep freeze, where you have sovereign democracies that will actually be afraid of regulating for the environment and for people. People power is the way to fight for a fair deal. The people have been demanding a fair deal all around the Pacific Rim. Jesse Jackson and Ben & Jerry spoke out in Chicago. The Peruvian people called for a fair deal. In Australia, environmentalists and trade unionists marched in solidarity. The Japanese called for economic justice. Opposition to corporate power is building in New Zealand. Malaysians are defending their national sovereignty. They are speaking out against the international trade regime that pays polluters rather than making polluters pay. They are speaking out against a system in which property rights trump environmental responsibility. They're speaking out against kangaroo courts making economic policy for the Pacific region and saying that it's time to throw the secret drafts of the Trans-Pacific Partnership into the dustbin.
To address climate disruption, we need to fully embrace clean energy and stop the use and export of coal, oil, and gas. But right now, there's a trade deal, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, that would threaten our ability to make these changes. the United States and 11 other countries in the Pacific Rim are negotiating this secret trade deal. TPP negotiations are closed to the public, but open to select corporate executives. So it's no surprise that the TPP would give broad new rights to coal, oil, gas, and other multinational companies. They could sue the U.S. government in secret trade courts over laws and policies that reduce their profits. That means half a century of environmental progress threatened just to deepen big corporations' pockets. Similar trade deals like NAFTA have favored corporations over countries. Under these pacts, corporations have challenged the laws in over 100 countries, increasingly attacking policies that protect our air, water, and climate. The Trans-Pacific Partnership also includes rules that would require the U.S. Department of Energy to automatically approve all exports of natural gas to countries in the pact. This would open the floodgates for fracking across the United States and create more dangerous climate emissions. This is just some of what we know about the TPP. What lurks in the shadows of the pact may be even worse. The time has come to build a new model of trade that puts communities and our environment above corporate profits.
Welcome to the Grassroots Alliance. This is sort of its third reinvention, I think, and I'm thrilled that this group is still here and working and reinventing itself to stay relevant and in the movement. What we do is give space to environmental and climate organizations to do the very important work that's being done in New York City. And it's part of our environmental efforts work here at Ethical Culture. It's a very intrinsic part of what we stand for in our mission. And we're really just very happy to be able to do this and to partner with these groups. And thank you for your work.
I'm a member of the Grassroots Alliance, and as Monica said, we have reinvented ourselves several different times, and we're in the process of doing it again. We're really grateful to Monica to be the liaison to the Ethical Culture Society for the Grassroots Alliance, because you've made it possible for meetings to happen. Without places to meet, it's really hard to do anything. First, I want to show you what the Grassroots Alliance is like by saying that in this room, there are representatives of grassroots groups that are member groups of the Grassroots Alliance, and maybe people can do a little quick shout out of the names of your groups. And in addition to this grassroots groups that are in the room, we also have national groups and international groups who are allies, because the Alliance is a group of grassroots groups. In the process of changing things around in the Grassroots Alliance to make ourselves more relevant, as Monica said, we had a meeting 3 weeks ago. We were brainstorming the future of the Grassroots Alliance and what we should do. And it was a small planning group, and then a few newcomers came, including Greg and Kimberly and Max. And who was your other person that came? Oh no, there was a different group. And it was a very active brainstorming group. And little by little, we started to get to this idea because we realized that the TPP is very time sensitive. So that's why it's so great that you're all here. And you'll hear why it's time sensitive. Many of you probably already know. How many of you have been to TPP events or know a fair amount about it already? Great, terrific. Okay, so this is not just an information session because we recognize that it's time sensitive, we have to act. So it'll be a little bit of education, but more about action. Stephanie Lowe. Sierra
So I'm thrilled to see so many people. My God, wow, this is so great. There is a copy of my speech on every chair, and you can follow along with me. What's the one overarching worst thing about the TPP? And the answer is the Investor-State Dispute Settlement Process, also known as ISDS. What's that? It's a legal process borrowed from NAFTA that gives corporations doing business in TPP member countries the right to sue any of those countries if their laws interfere with a corporation's ability to make money, no matter what the cost to the health, well-being, environment, and laws of the citizens in the country being sued. The ISDS sets up a private court consisting of 3 attorneys with deep ties to the corporations that wrote the trade agreement. This court is totally unconnected to our U.S. legal system. Only corporations, not nations, may sue in these courts, and there is no appeal to the decision of the 3 judges. Totally unfair. Oh, and by the way, if our country loses the case, we taxpayers have to pay humongous fines or change our laws to please the suing corporation. How does the ISDS work? I'll give you some examples so you can see exactly how. The COOL Act is a labeling law that requires supermarkets and grocery stores to tell their customers where certain food groups originated. That used to include beef and pork. Mexico used the ISDS process in NAFTA to sue the United States because their beef and pork wasn't selling as well as ours. They said that our COOL Act labeling gave us an unfair advantage in trade. After 6 years of expensive lawyering back and forth, the ISDS court ruled that Mexico was right, and we could either pay a $1.5 billion fine or change our law. Congress didn't want to be responsible for siphoning off $1.5 billion of our tax dollars, so they caved. And now our supermarkets and grocery stores are no longer required to tell us where our beef and pork come from. As you probably know, beef and pork can cause serious illness unless their production is well monitored. Now we can't know if our beef and pork come from Mexico or any other place, so we can't make an educated guess about whether our beef and pork are safe or not. In the present, I'm sure you all remember the KXL pipeline that we spent so many years of rallies and lobbying against, so Obama would reject it. Well, he did reject it. Now, TransCanada, the mother of KXL, has sued us, calling the pipeline's rejection an impediment to trade under the rules of NAFTA. If TransCanada wins, the fine in this case will be $15 billion, and if we don't pay up, we get the pipeline. By the way, whether it goes well or badly for the country being sued, and Ken will tell us about recent legal victory in El Salvador later, you have to factor in, no matter what happens, you have to factor in that the process itself is time-consuming, expensive, and shifts attention away from necessary issues such as climate change. Instead of moving us forward, even the best outcomes only defend beneficial laws that are already happening. Another, by the way, the TPP would allow 9,000 more businesses access to the ISDS process because that is currently possible. Access to the 9,000 more businesses access than to the ISDS process than is currently possible under NAFTA. That's because NAFTA includes only 3 countries, Mexico, Canada, and us, but the TPP includes 12. It's the largest trade agreement ever written, which is why it's called NAFTA on steroids. I'm giving you a link to a map of TPP member country affiliates currently doing business in each of our states. You can easily copy it out. There are visibly thousands on this map. New York State alone would get 3,000 more businesses able to sue us. So far, the U.S. hasn't gotten a great number of trade lawsuits because our current trade agreements are mostly with developing nations that have no business affiliates here. But the TPP would change that. So the future could see many more of our protections coming on the chopping block. And the future has things like this. The Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiatives, known as RGGI, is a cooperative NGO effort among 9 East Coast states to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The program would likely be a likely target for ISDS lawsuits. The New York State fracking ban ordered by Governor Cuomo could be challenged as a barrier to trade, especially by Japan, which is the largest importer of natural gas in the world. Generic drugs could take as much as twice as long to come to market. This would, of course, raise prescription drug prices and would mean death for those who can't afford, for example, HIV treatment. All politicians say they care about jobs, and there may be some who actually care about our jobs as well as their own. So we've all heard about job outsourcing, but I only just heard about how the TPP would allow something called insourcing in TPP's Chapter 10. This would let corporations I'm glad to see everybody's following along. This would let corporations in doing business in TPP member countries bring in workers from any other TPP member country, say from Vietnam, where the daily wage is $2.23. The U.S. daily wage is $58. And there's no obligation to pay Vietnamese workers or any other nation's workers wages that are pegged to the host country's wage scale. That's, talk about slavery. So the bottom line is the TPP, by way of ISDS, can threaten anything in our society, including jobs, food safety, banking regulations, prescription drug prices, internet freedom, fracking bans and/or regulations, our past, present, and future consumer protection laws, pipelines, oil, gas, and nuclear legislation, and even bring back coal, LNG ports and compressor stations, federal, state, and local procurement policies such as Buy American. Anything any of us here care about and work to preserve or oppose is red meat to the TPP. The very act of advocating for or against anything would hang in the balance, since any initiative put forward by a legislator might be nipped in the bud or never proposed. That's what the chilling factor is. If it interferes with some corporation making obscene piles of money at the expense of us, the people. The United States of America would no longer exist. It would be the United States of Monsanto, Exxon, Chesapeake Gas, Pharma, all the mega corporations that helped write this mother of all trade agreements. The final bottom line is the TPP must not pass. So, P.S., if you have time to call your Congress member and share some of these ISDS facts with them or their staff, it's well worth doing since they will be voting on it soon. Even better, call to schedule a visit. For more information about organizing a visit, you can call my cell number or send me an email, and there's the congressional in-district dates are written down here for your convenience if you want to try and get a visit on those dates. If you live in Charlie Rangel's district, please, please use the flyer to call his office and urge him to vote no on the TPP. Even better, drop by his office to make the pitch. He's retiring, but he'll still be in office for the upcoming TPP vote, and he needs your encouragement to vote the right way. And you can also flyer with Grannies for Peace from 12 to 1 at 1:30 on Monday, November 21st, in front of Rangel's office building at 125th Street and Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you. Our next speaker is Ken Gale, who moderates a radio program on WBAI called EcoLogic, and he founded NYCSEC, right, New York City Safe Energy Campaign, and he's very active with Indian Point closure projects and things like that, and I'm sure he's doing many more other things. He's going to talk a little bit more about the things that Stephanie talked about, but also the positives that have been going on, the positive glimpses of positivity that are going on about TPP.
Yeah, I'm really happy to see a lot of people I know, and I'm really happy to see a lot of people I don't know here. That's pretty cool. There's a lot of times I see the same faces, so that's kind of neat. My radio show is EcoLogic. I'm on alternate Tuesdays on 99.5 FM and WBAI.org. There's flyers on the front table. And I do want to start with one horror story about TPP before I give something positive. The United States government, because of TPP, is complicit in slavery. I did a radio show about this about a month or so ago. There are more people enslaved right now than in the height of the slave trade in the 19th century. Now, there's a bigger percentage of people were enslaved back then than now, but the number of slaves is huge. And how is the U.S. complicit with it? Malaysia, one of the TPP countries, has got one of the worst human rights records in the entire world. They will put an ad out in the Mideast or India saying, oh, you have jobs. And then when the people go to Malaysia, they suddenly find that those jobs are slaves. All right, they become slaves. And what do? They cut down tropical rainforest. So already endangered species get driven into extinction. And then after they've cut down the rainforest, they put in a plantation, usually palm oil. Right? Palm oil process is not good for us in the first place. And the people who lived in those rainforests, there goes their culture. So we're driving a lot of indigenous cultures in Southeast Asia into extinction also. The U.S. State Department, which had Malaysia as designated Tier 3 because of their human rights record and the slavery, said, oh, no, you're Tier 2 now, so that they could sign the Trans-Pacific Partnership and nobody could say that there was a slave country involved in TPP. Well, there is a slave country involved in TPP. There's 30 chapters. When you hear somebody touting how wonderful TPP is, they'll quote 1 or 2 sentences out of 6,000 pages and ignore all the rest of it. Now, most of these people haven't read all 6,000 pages, whether they've got staff people to do it for them or not. So they don't know that for every sentence that they can go, ooh, this is nice, is contradicted by dozens of other sentences throughout the document. So what TPP pretends to give with one place, it takes away over and over and over again. You'll see things like, you should consider the environment, but you must approve liquefied natural gas plants. Right? So they have this hazy thing when it comes to something good, and demanding things when it comes to something that's polluting. I mean, people call it NAFTA on steroids. I call it Citizens United on steroids, because the Citizens United case gives corporations a lot of power because now money is free speech. Well, the TPP allows them even more power because they can overrule our laws. So it's not just their money, but what they can do to what all the laws, clean air, clean water, whatever you want. 9 years ago, Pacific Rim Mining Company wanted to put a gold mine in El Salvador. They used cyanide to mine gold. Cyanide's a poison, right? How many mystery movies and TV shows have we seen where they use cyanide to kill somebody? Well, that cyanide would have poisoned more than half of the drinking water of the country of El Salvador. More than half. Plus their crops, their domestic animals, the wildlife. So the country of El Salvador said, no, you can't put a gold mine in our country. So Pacific Rim Mining Company, which has got a new name, they sued El Salvador for $250 million, saying, well, we're going to profit from the gold mine and you're not letting us do it, so we're going to sue you for the money we would have made. And how much money we get to say how much money we would have made. And they sued them with that World Bank tribunal, 3 corporate lawyers, and somehow, after 9 years, and El Salvador spending $13 million, El Salvador won. Yes. They won. And that almost never happens. I mean, corporate lawyers fighting in favor of a country over corporations, fighting in favor of air and water over profit, doesn't usually happen. So corporate lawyers are studying that case to make sure it doesn't happen again. Environmental lawyers are studying the case to make sure it does happen again. And from what I've heard from some of the people, they're saying, well, you know, Pacific Rim, if they were more careful, they would have won. They were probably so arrogant in the fact that these tribunals never find in favor of people and water, that they were clumsy. So maybe in the future they won't be as clumsy and these tribunals will rule in their favor. But maybe not. But the point with that case is that these tribunals are not all powerful. And the more light that we can shine on the shadowy goings-on with those tribunals, the less of the shadows they can hide in. So it's very important that we keep up the work, no matter what happens during the lame duck session. And is somebody from Pilgrim Pipeline here in Jersey?
Sort of. I'm not really involved in detail. I was at the Round Pole Napi camp.
Want me to talk about it?
Absolutely.
The Pilgrim Pipeline is a movement in New Jersey and New York. They want to build a pipeline from Albany to Linden, New Jersey. And people have been stopping this pipeline throughout New York and New Jersey. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of local bans and resolutions to stop that pipeline. The amount of successes has been amazing. Because what will happen is they'll get, these are relatively small towns. And so when a bunch of people go to a town meeting, the politicians are like, whoa, all right, I can't hide. So no matter how much money the pipeline people give them, they're going, yeah, but I'm not going to get reelected. Look at all these people. So they're passing these bans. Well, guess what TPP would do to those bans? All right? I've been touting that success story on EcoLogic for months and months and months, because it's so uplifting to get another victory, another victory, another victory. And I would hate to see all of that work overturned by one sign of a pen in Congress. So that's enough for me until Q&A time.
Thank you, Ken. So since most of you said that you've heard a lot about the informational things about TPP, we said we were going to do more about what you can do, and the transition to what you can do will be a combined talk between Adam Weissman and Eric Weltman, who are going to talk about the political lay of the land and why you should do certain things politically. So, welcome.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are in the fight against TPP and how we got there and what the battle ahead looks like for us. Before we do that, I just wanted to make two notes that really piggybacking on points two of the previous speakers made that really drive home just how frightening and vile TPP really is. The first, the country of origin labeling case that Stephanie talked about, that case was brought by Mexico under using a state-to-state challenge at the World Trade Organization. And what that means is that was the country bringing a challenge against another country. What makes ISDS under TPP so frightening is that a corporation wouldn't even have to bother with a country. They wouldn't even need to convince the country to bring that case. A corporation can directly bring a lawsuit. So it really is an expansion of corporate power. The second point is Ken mentioned how Malaysia was bumped up to Tier 2 on the trafficking in persons list. Well, that wasn't because the Obama administration was worried about the optics of a trade agreement with a country that was a human trafficker. That was because of the fact that, that was because of what I'm about to talk about, which is fast track, and how keeping Malaysia on Tier 3 would have kludged up moving TPP under fast track. Fast track is a process that dates back to the Nixon administration. Elizabeth Warren describes it as a process designed to grease the skids on bad trade deals. And the way that it works, Article 1, Section 8, Clause C of the Constitution makes it very clear that it's Congress, and specifically the House of Representatives, that is supposed to be in charge of international commercial agreements between the U.S. and other countries. That is a problem when you have an executive branch that wants to basically use trade agreements as a stealth way to negotiate corporate power grabs. So what fast track does is it effectively delegates that power to the executive branch so that the executive branch, instead of Congress, can go and negotiate trade deals, give the corporations everything they want in secret negotiations, have corporate advisory committees that whisper in the ears of all the negotiators as to what goodies the corporations want in there, and then sign the agreement before Congress has ever even really looked over it and said a word about it. Fast track supposedly builds in all these ways for Congress to say, well, this is what we want in an agreement. The executive branch doesn't actually have to do anything other than say, well, that's nice. And then that agreement goes back to Congress after it's already been signed, at which point Congress has the option of saying, well, they can vote down the agreement saying that, this doesn't meet the standard of what we said should be in the agreement. But that's really no different than just voting it down altogether. What Congress is voting on at that point is an implementing bill on the already signed agreement, in which they cannot change a period, a comma, a letter. They have to vote on exactly what's sent to them. So that implementing bill gets sent to Congress, and at that point, every corporate lobbyist goes into overdrive, threatening every elected official that if you ever want to see another term, you need to vote for this. And since they can't change any of it, it's now a binary choice. Either vote with the people or vote with the corporations. Well, this government being what it is, every single time in history, a trade agreement has gone to Congress under fast track. That trade agreement has been signed. There is one way that Nancy Pelosi found a loophole in 2007 because Bush tried to send a poison pill or 2008 because Bush tried to send a poison pill in an election year, but that just meant that they prolonged it and it came back later. Once an agreement is sent to Congress under fast track, the House has 60 days to vote on it, the Senate has 90, they're limited to 20 hours of floor debate in each House. According to Alan Grayson, that means that basically if every member wanted to testify, every member of the House would have 88 seconds to offer testimony in this 20-hour capped floor debate. So pretty much this is designed to rush through bad trade deals before anyone even knows what they're voting on, before the public even catches wind, and without Congress being able to in any way change the very worst of these trade deals. So the thing that they were worried about with Malaysia was Robert Menendez, the senator from New Jersey, put in an amendment to fast track that when fast track was reauthorized in 2005, that said that no trade agreement could be passed with a country, could be fast tracked with a country on tier 3 of the trafficking in persons list. Well, then they tried to water it down. Menendez cut a deal with Ron Wyden, ranking member of the Finance Committee, so they were going to do a light version of that amendment that wouldn't have been as strong, but then they tripped themselves up. Rand Paul was did his pseudo filibuster on privacy issues, and Mitch McConnell wanted to rush them out for the weekend because they all wanted to go on vacation. So they accidentally left Menendez's amendment in the final bill. So the result is they ended up with an amendment saying you can't fast track a trade agreement with a country that's on the worst of the worst slavery list. So the way around that, in a year when mass graves were found in Malaysia because of human trafficking, was not to say, well, crap, we should remove Malaysia from this trade agreement, or we should hold off on this trade agreement until the issue of human trafficking has been addressed in Malaysia in a serious way. They did what Ken said and upgraded Malaysia to tier 2 purely for political reasons. So that's really that just gives you a sense of just how vile and cynical the process around these trade agreements is. So where are we right now? Well, the Obama administration has, as if this wasn't all cynical enough, they know that we just had, well, we're 1 day away from, or less than a day away from the end of a presidential election where TPP was a complete hot button issue, where Hillary Clinton, as WikiLeaks has realized that it was so politically damaging for her to support this deal that she had to find a way as quickly as possible to come out against a deal that as Secretary of State she had said was the gold standard for trade deals, where Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, two candidates who probably agreed on nothing ever, were singing the same tune on TPP. And so because TPP and trade agreements like it have become so politically toxic, even fast track alone wasn't enough to push this deal. So they had to do something even sneakier, which is they had to push the deal into the so-called lame duck session after the election. The lame duck session is where bad bills go to be voted on when no one is looking. Here's how the lame duck works. After the election, no one's going to be thinking about politics. People are going to be thinking about Thanksgiving. People are going to be thinking about Christmas. Moreover, you have all these elected officials who have just faced an election and will not face an election again for minimum 2 years for House members, 6 years for senators, if they've just been reelected, and many, worst of all, who are either retiring, like Charlie Rangel, or who have just been voted out of office. Well, this is the perfect time to find out which corporation is going to give you the biggest suitcase full of unmarked bills. This is the perfect time, because you have nothing to lose, to find out, whether Walmart or Goldman Sachs are going to give you 6 or 7 figures for your next speech. And this is the perfect time to be bribed on shady legislation and hope the voters will never find out about it, or will have a short enough memory before before they have to go back to the polls. So the plan is to fast track TPP during the lame duck, and in any other year that would be a shoo-in for a trade deal. But as in many other ways, nothing is normal about this year politically. And so because all of us, thank you everyone, have done such a good job of making TPP so toxic, for the first time ever, we have a fighting chance with a fast-tracked trade deal, even one that's going to be voted on in the lame duck session. And Eric's going to tell you about the amazing progress that we've made here in New York in pushing almost every member of our congressional delegation to take a position against TPP, and he's going to tell you about the few who we still need to work on.
So again, I'm Eric Weltman. I'm with Food and Water Watch, a nonprofit environmental organization whose mission is to protect our most vital resources from corporate control and abuse. And we feel like just about everything we care about and support or working on is threatened by the TPP. So here's the bad news and here's the good news. The bad news is, as Adam suggested, the TPP may be introduced into Congress by President Obama as early as next week, the week of November 14th. The good news is we can stop it, and I'm fairly certain we will stop it in the House of Representatives. So there's essentially, zero chance, obviously, that we can influence President Obama between now and Monday, unless, no chance of that. And in fact, we're likely to lose in the Senate. The Senate, it may be fairly close, but we're likely to lose in the Senate. But we are going to win in the House if we do the work that we need to do. As Adam suggested, it's a very complicated political dynamic where the Trump folks are against it. Bernie Sanders was against it. Hillary Clinton nominally against it. In the House, it's even weird. Jill Stein against it. I'm not sure how much influence she has in the House of Representatives, but probably not. Right, but folks, so the point is the House of Representatives, where, if anything, this is my point, it's even uglier and weirder, where you have Republicans who oppose just about anything that Obama supports. You have the Tea Party Republicans, you have the Trump Republicans, you have Republicans that represent working class, blue collar states. You have progressive Democrats. So we stand a very good chance of stopping the TPP in the House, but we've still got a lot of work to do. As Adam suggested, we have just a small number of targets remaining in the entire state of New York, 2 of which are here in the city. There's Representative Rice, who's on Long Island, Nassau County. There's Representative Charlie Rangel, who represents the Bronx and parts of the Bronx and Harlem. He happens to be retiring. And there's Representative Crowley, Joseph Crowley, who represents parts of Queens, Astoria, and parts of the Bronx. We need to work on the ground in those districts, petitioning, handing out leaflets, generating calls, as much as we can do on the ground to generate pressure to these 3 legislators, to Rice, Crowley, Rangel, over the next few weeks. And that's something that Food and Water Watch and the Sierra Club and all of our allies are really dedicated to. And we need your help with that. So as early as tomorrow, we're doing leafleting at polling locations in Rangel's district. We've got 3 polling locations that we're going to be covering from 7 to 9 in the morning, then from 4 to 6 in the afternoon, then from 6 to 8 in the evening. And we welcome people helping out tomorrow. We're going to be doing, Food and Water Watch is participating in a National Call-In Day on Thursday the 17th. We're going to be doing leafleting and generating calls on Thursday the 17th. I'm actually going to pass around a little homemade sign-in sheet, and if you're available to help on Thursday, November 17th, please sign up. Here's a pen as well. Please sign in. We'll be in touch. We're going to be, again, leafleting at subway stations and generating calls on the ground. Again, the urgency is incredible, but we do have the opportunity, here in New York. Literally every vote is going to count. And we know that President Obama is doing everything he can to exert influence, offering rides on Air Force One, maybe that's not a joke actually. Helping people with their re-election campaigns. So I think
I hope you're going to just say a couple of words about why you think Obama wants to get this through TPP. If you're willing to say 1 or 2 sentences on that. I could offer some slightly informed speculation on Obama's motives.
and you know, Adam and others could do so as well. I will offer my very slightly informed speculation, but I would also mention that, again, in some ways that it's sort of irrelevant, you know, what his motives are. I mean, he's going to do what he's going to do, you know, regardless of why we think he's doing it. I think there's a couple motivations. I think he is arrogant enough to think that somehow he can produce a deal that's better than anyone else has before. I mean, he's nothing if not, you know, arrogant. So that's one thing. And by the way, I should mention, that is very much a factor in why one of the reasons we can defeat this deal is because, you know, throughout his 8-year tenure, his relationship with Congress has been pretty piss poor, pardon my French. I mean, I think he's a bright guy, but he, you know, again, he is arrogant, and he really he's not interested in the kind of, you know, camaraderie or backslapping or engagement with members of Congress that you really need to, you know, to get, you know, things done. And that's, you know, to his detriment, but perhaps to our favor. So I think there's arrogance. I think there's some genuine sense that, you know, this is part of his pivot to China, you know, to Asia, and I think he is, you know, perhaps legitimately concerned about the rising power of China. And it's also a function of, you know, look, he's a moderate mainstream corporate Democrat. I mean, he always has been, you know. Again, I think, you know, the speculation about, you know, Obama's motives may be interesting, but in the weeks ahead, it really needs to be about the House, the House, the House, the House, the House. And I would suggest that everything we do in the coming weeks be with an eye towards reinforcing the support of House members and winning over those who may be on the fence.
Thank you.
What's the Watch doing in the other states? Yeah, for which states? For the House representatives elsewhere.
And which are the districts that we can contact people in that seem to be swing districts?
So I'll say a couple of quick things. So first of all, Food and Water Watch on sort of the national level is working phenomenally closely with Public Citizen. They've got a phenomenal outfit in DC that's doing a lot of great work. We're working obviously with the AFL-CIO. We're, you know, so we're all kind of, you know, coordinating. Well, I'll tell you, I have a quick second. We have a door-to-door canvass in Colorado, and one of our canvassers just happened to knock on the door of a representative who's on the fence. Oh, wow. And it was actually an interesting situation because the congressman didn't, like, our canvasser knew that it was a congressman, but the congressman didn't let on that he was a congressman. So they had kind of an interesting little debate for about 5 or 10 minutes before the congressman acknowledged who he was, and our canvasser was like, yeah, I know who you are. But it was fun. Yeah, it was kind of funny. But so, yeah, I mean, you know, we're working in I don't know, Illinois, Colorado, a lot of states.
Given that Rangel is retiring and doesn't have to care about too much, what are the arguments that we think can really have sway?
At this point, I think that the only argument that will hold any water is to hit him in his heart. There's no other reason for him to do what we want. We've heard various tales of. He knows exactly what the TPP is. I was at an event where I talked about the TPP for 2 minutes. He got up afterwards and spoke for 5 minutes, and it could have been me speaking. He knew everything about the TPP.
He got your speech.
Huh?
He got your speech. He had a copy of your speech.
I didn't give my speech. I was nervous. My feeling is, he has done he's done things that I know he's proud of. He was a hero in the Korean War, and the people that I think he's closest to are some of the people who were in there with him. He led about 20 people in his outfit to safety. They were surrounded by the enemy, and he was severely wounded, but he got them out of there. And I think he won a very big decoration for that, and he's legitimately proud of it. I mean, he was standing with the people, literally. And I think he's, I think he does care about his constituents. And I think the only possible way we can, grab anything from him is to thank him for what he's done and say, I know you're going to do the right thing for the people. Just.
So you don't know at this point.
Can I just add one quick thing to that, is that, I think it's motivating his interest in, going out a hero and maintaining his legacy. So it is a matter of self-interest. It's not, purely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's about him wanting to, maintain his legacy as a hero.
It's not indicated whether he's going to vote against it.
He said that his public statements have been that he wants a sweetener. He wants TPP attached to infrastructure funding. So what remains to be seen is what dance Barack Obama is going to play in terms of what he built into the implementing bill to win a few more Democratic votes while not losing some Republican votes when Republicans feel he already hasn't given them enough.
Okay. So an argument might be, no matter how much infrastructure we get, if people, if our laws are going to be subverted by an international court, what good is it going to do us? They could bring in workers from other countries to take the infrastructure jobs. So, Congressman Rangel, do you want that?
And thank you, all of you, for what you just said. I just want to point out that there's a handout on your chairs from the New York City Grassroots Alliance. Please look at it for a second. By the way, thank you, Jill McManus, for putting this together. It really took a lot of energy and time. There are 3 categories. I just want to call your attention to this. So anybody who says they can't do much, they can only do a few things from home, the first category is for them. Anybody in this room can do those. We want everybody to do all of those because those are really the easiest things you can do. You don't have to go anywhere to do them. So please take a look and promote these to your friends. Ask people to do them themselves. The next category is on the back of the sheet, says New York Serious Fund Actions to Join. You'll see there are 7 or 8 altogether on the back. So those are ones you have to show up in New York for. The third category is TPP events that are going on in DC in the next few weeks. We hope that some of you will join those actions, and in a few minutes there's going to be some organizing discussion of who can go where and how to get there and things like that. Transportation, Adam's going to help with that organizing piece, and Wendy. Ken Gale is going to moderate a Q&A, and all the speakers who've spoken so far are invited to come up here.
The thing about calling other parts of the country, I would like help for you to put that out on one of the email things. These are maybe in California or in the Midwest, so that we can make those phone calls and help out those comrades in those districts.
Well, it's not quite as far as California or the Midwest, but there is Long Island and Kathleen Rice. Kathleen Rice is the slime ball turncoat of the TPP fight. This is a reference.
You called her converted rice.
We were hoping she wouldn't get reelected. We called her Minute Rice, but anyway. So she was a freshman representative who signed a freshman letter against Fast Track and then ended up voting for it. So everyone's really mad at her. And so we really do not want to give her any wiggle room on voting for TPP and saying that she didn't hear from lots of constituents about it.
Well, no, in terms of actions, if folks are amenable to traveling out to Nassau County, we're working very closely with a wonderful activist named Lisa Oldendorf. Lisa Oldendorf is affiliated with Move On. She lives in Massapequa, and she's helping coordinating leafleting actions on the evening of the 15th, so Tuesday the 15th at supermarkets. So if you want to go out for a late afternoon, early evening to Long Island, that's the evening of Tuesday the 15th, as well as at train stations on the morning of Thursday the 17th.
You all, I'm sure, are going to go to lots of lectures and workshops and protests over the next month. We're all involved in a lot of struggles, and if we don't stop this, every pipeline fight, every coal extraction fight, every fight around basically every fight around building a sustainable energy future will be compromised if we can't fight TPP. So let's stop the TPP so we can live to fight another day, and stop all these pipelines and reactors and coal mines and offshore drilling platforms and build a sustainable energy future. If you can only go to DC on one day this month, the 30th is that day. On the 30th, there's going to be a National Lobby Day and a Rock Against the TPP concert. So this is the day to meet with your representatives in Washington. This is the day to meet with some of our key representatives representing your organizations. We haven't yet figured out if we're getting a bus or we're just going to take the mega bus or bolt bus together. But again, if you can only make it down one day, this is the day to do it.
We have a couple of songs from the Raging Grannies.
Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, oh no! Our world will tremble in its grip. TPP, oh no! Grabbing big bucks here, grabbing big bucks there. Here a buck, there a buck, everywhere a buck, buck. Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, oh no! 600 corporations and 11 countries can knock the whole planet to its knees. Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, oh no! Clean air, clean water, be restraint of trade. They'll never clean up the mess they made. Workers' rights, bans on fracking, food safety, send it all packing. Engineer drugs, send the prices high. More folks get sick and die. Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP must go.
When you go on the march, make lots of copies and you get other people to sing with you. Because the songs that are written by experienced Corinne wrote this one. And Corinne wrote this, the next one, Sunny and Alex.
Have you heard of TPP? It's a secret you can't see. Bye-bye unions. Trans-Pacific Partnership, all involved, keep closed lips. Bye-bye public health. It was leaked that it will unleash Wall Street. Corporations will change laws through D.C. Pharmaceuticals with glee keep their drug monopoly. World AIDS care. Bye-bye. Our officials have agreed to concede to its needs. Bye-bye clean air. Pacific countries, East and West, make TPP the scariest. Generic drugs, bye-bye. Clean air, clean water, and indigenous justice. GMO-free foods are there on that list. They are in the human plan that the TPP will ban. Bye-bye our rights. Now Congress is bringing back the voting rules they call fast track. Bye-bye democracy. Fast track overrides protests. Objections will not be addressed. Bye-bye transparency. When 11 nations meet for this show, every place they make can be a death blow. Trans-Pacific Partnership, all your powers we must strip. TPP, bye-bye.